I'm Brent Stafford, and this is Aftermath of Murder Survivor Stories, a multi-part video series produced in support of the National Victims of Crime Week. This series features exclusive interviews with ordinary people who have experienced an extraordinary event, the devastating loss of a loved one through murder. Aftermath of Murder goes behind the headlines as survivors share their stories about the loss, grief, trauma, and the hope for healing in the aftermath of murder. Joining us today is Markita Kaulius. In 2011, her 22-year-old daughter Cassandra was killed by a drunk driver who slammed into her car at over 100 kilometers per hour at an intersection in Surrey. Thanks for joining us today, Markita.
Thank you for having me.
So Markita, this is Aftermath of Murder Survivor Stories. Your daughter was killed by a drunk driver. Is that murder?
Absolutely, it's murder.
How so?
Well, I believe when someone chooses to put the public at risk and drive while being impaired, that they have made the choice that it doesn't matter who is in their path of destruction. And unfortunately, my daughter paid the price of her life for this woman's drinking and driving.
Many people do say that's what separates it. It's the issue of intent, whereas murder, there's some form of intent, and with drinking and driving, there isn't.
I disagree. I believe when someone gets behind the wheel of a car and turns that ignition on, they've made the choice, a selfish choice, but they have made the choice to put everyone at risk. This could have happened to anybody's child, and sadly we lose 1,200 to 1,600 people a year to an impaired driver.
Tell us about what happened to Cassandra.
On May 3rd, 2011, she went out to coach a softball game and play in a game herself. She left the park about 10 o'clock on a Monday night and was driving home, and she was 3 blocks from home. She stopped at a red light and waved goodbye to her coach as the light turned green, and as she pulled out into the intersection to make the left turn, a white speeding van came down the curb lane and accelerated the last 500 feet into the intersection, got airborne over railroad tracks, and slammed into my daughter's driver's side door.
What was the extent of the injuries in the accident? Or is it an accident?
It's not an accident. These are collisions. Accidents happen because of mechanical failure or weather conditions, but when someone deliberately makes the choice to drive while impaired, these are collisions. Her car was blown apart across 4 lanes of traffic, debris everywhere. Her door was caved in 2 feet into the side of her, and her car was just destroyed. This woman got out of the van that she was driving, walked back to see my daughter dying, and then she took off running. We found out in court that she had a cell phone with her, but never tried to call 911 for help.
When we spoke in our pre-interview, and we were talking about the details of the collision and the nature of Cassandra's injuries, there was only so far you would go in terms of details. Why is that?
My husband and my older children do not know the extent of her injuries. That was something they could well imagine, but didn't want to know the details, and I totally respected that. I know, and I'm the only one that knows in our family what those were.
You chose to see?
We had to go identify our daughter, and then a few months later I got her autopsy report, and they were severe, and no one should die like this, and believe me, drunk driving, impaired driving is a homicide.
What has been the emotional impact on you and your family?
Oh, it's changed our world. We're devastated. We were a very close family. She was 6 feet tall, blonde, blue-eyed, heart of gold, great sense of humor, athletic, competitive. She could light up the room with her smile. She was a best friend to everybody. I learned afterwards that she had 743 Facebook friends.
And one of them was her boyfriend with this something special.
Yeah, we found out the night that she died that he had actually was going to ask her to marry him. They've been dating for 6 years, and he and his family were left devastated as well. It is on your mind 24/7. You can't get it out of your mind. You cannot sleep, you cannot eat. You know, parents aren't supposed to bury their children or make that decision. Do you cremate your child or do you bury your child? And the only way we could bring her back home was we had her cremated. And we have her at home where she's safe now.
Do you speak to her?
I speak to her every day. I go by and I tell her I love her. I say goodnight to her. I sit down beside her. It's horrible to be a mother without your child. I'm facing a lifetime sentence of being without my daughter. The offender in our case got a 37-month sentence. When she went into federal time, you can actually, which we learned along the way, that you can apply for parole after 6 months. And we went to a parole hearing in November of 2013, and thankfully the parole board did deny her parole at that time, but she will come up for parole again later this year, in November 2014, which she will probably be released then. And we will still serve a lifetime sentence. Our daughter got a death sentence, and this one will do less than 2 years.
So clearly justice has not been done.
There's absolutely no justice in this. Sadly, the justice system and the courts do not seem to take impaired driving seriously as they should.
Since Cassandra's death, you've done a lot of advocacy work in this area. Can you describe that?
We started a group called Families for Justice, and we now have families from across Canada who have come to join us, that they too have lost a loved one to an impaired driver. And I think most people don't realize the number of people that are killed every year to impaired driving. It's 12 to 1,600 people a year, roughly 4 to 6 people a day. If someone went into Tim Hortons today and shot 4 people, and went into another Tim Hortons and shot another 4 people the following day, there would be an outrage from the community that something needs to be done. That can't happen. But we lose 4 to 6 people a day to an impaired driver, and nothing's done.
I think some people in Canada might be surprised to know that here we do not have vehicular homicide, whereas in the States there is.
Yeah, down in the States you're looking at 10 to 30 years of a sentence. Here we've seen sentences of $1,500 fines, $2,000 fines, 90 days to be served on weekends. Ridiculous sentences. These are homicides. Absolutely, they're homicides.
So you've just met with the Justice Minister, Peter MacKay. What was the message, and from what I understand, the 2 most important things that you're asking for the federal government to do? We
are asking the federal government of Canada to look at implementing mandatory minimum sentencing for anyone convicted of impaired driving causing a death. We're asking for a 5-year minimum mandatory sentence. We would like to see them amend the current charge of impaired driving causing death and redefine it as vehicular manslaughter. What's your message to those who still choose to drink and drive? I ask that they don't be so selfish. That 1 or 2 of drinks, you think you're fine to go home. It's only a couple of blocks. My daughter died 3 blocks from my home. I said to somebody the other day that in life we can change things. You know, if we want to lose weight, we can. If you want to change your job, you can. When someone is killed, you cannot get that person back. That's the one thing in life. Death is final. My family history has changed. My family has changed. You know, we'll have a Christmas function or a birthday or something. We all look around. We know. We don't have to say it. Someone's missing from the family.
If you or someone you know has experienced a loss through homicide, go to the BC Victims of Homicide website at bcvoh.com to find available resources and information on upcoming support groups. If you're interested in volunteering or to make a donation, visit the BC Bereavement Helpline website. This has been Aftermath of Murder: Survivor Stories.